Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of CopaLoadofRacing, where we're going to be looking at reviewing Cheltenham 2019 and also races, a couple of races at Kelso tomorrow. They've got a good card there. Pick out a tip for Newbury and one also at Lingfield. Pretty quiet Saturday for racing, but we have a lot ahead of us still. We'll come on to that in a moment, but let's get back to Cheltenham. It was a pretty eventful Cheltenham, shall we say. I hope, first of all, looking back on our preview, I was joined by Peter Miller and Stuart MacLeod for that, and I hope looking back on it, there was quite a few tips there for you from ourselves. Some of them did better than others, but it is always difficult, Cheltenham, particularly that Tuesday and Friday. I must admit, it was really, really tough. Although Stuart had tipped up Classical Dream in the opener in the Supreme, I'd managed to tip up City Island in the Triumph as well, and Frodon, and there was a few in there from us. Yeah, proved not a bad Cheltenham overall for myself, tipping wise. Wednesday and Thursday in particular, it was great to see the likes of Frodon winning Paisley Park, Tiger Roll doing magnificently well as well in there. So a lot's also obviously come out of it. Bryony Frost, the Wednesday was quite an emotional day, of course. Or the Thursday, should I say, was quite an emotional day with Bryony winning on Frodon, and then that magnificent day of Paisley Park winning the Stayers Hurdle, and the story that had with Andrew Gemmell and Emma Lavelle, who maybe has been a little bit missed out on some of the adulation, but she thoroughly deserves it because that horse battled on so well. Thought Altior was a star on Wednesday as well. He showed some stamina and some guts after jumping the last to get up and win the Champion Chase. Some good novice performances in there as well. The Champion Hurdle was a little bit cut up. Apple's Jade has proved to have scoped pretty dirty there, and they hope that Punchestown will be its next target. Bouvidere fell, of course. Lorena just never... well, she was in there, going there, but Whisperly Allen was the winner, of course, and was overlooked by many, but was a very good winner, it has to be said. But yeah, Cheltenham Gold Cup, of course, Album Photo winning it for the first time for Willie Mullins. It was a pretty mixed race for Willie Mullins, to say the least. Sadly, one of his horses actually passed away after a bad fall. Then Bells Hill made a couple of bad mistakes and then just didn't get into rhythm, and Ruby Walsh pulled him up, which to my great disappointment. And yeah, but Album Photo, Kenboy also came to grief as well. But Album Photo ran really, really well. Good runs also by the likes of Bristol de May. I thought Annabelle Fly ran a real cracker as well. So that proved to be a real, it was a really enthralling Gold Cup. Maybe not the result that many expected. Native River was in there, of course. Presenting Percy never really ran well, but yeah, it was, as I say, a mixed bag. The Friday started off horrendously, obviously, after all the great stuff on Thursday. Horse racing has a way of really coming back to bite you, with Sir Eric receiving that fatal injury in the Triumph was, of course, was a real blow to us. I was seeing City Island there. City Island obviously won the Ballymore Properties hurdle, but Sir Eric, that was a real bitter blow, and that was one of the issues that came out as well. But one of the major things has been the National Chase, which was run on the Tuesday. There was a real plethora of negative media and after words said after it, it wasn't a pretty race to watch by any means. I was in, as I say, I was in Benidorm for the Cheltenham Festival, and we actually managed to catch the last two races, having the flight arriving just as the Champion Hurdle started, and then managing to get to the pub to see the last two races. I'd backed Jerry's Back, I have to say, and it wasn't a pretty sight. I didn't get much because we didn't really hear the commentary on the race, so I didn't really get a feel for it, as you sometimes can do when you're watching it at home. But it did look a war of attrition, and I do think that the penalty being rescinded for the jockey on Jerry's Back was pretty. I think that was fair enough, but I don't think there was a lot of rides in that race that just didn't sit comfortably with me. It's a race that I sometimes think a novice chase for novice, obviously for novice chasers over 4 miles, it's extreme, and when the ground is as tough as it can be at Cheltenham, and I've heard people saying, "Oh, but you get Eider chases that are like that," and we've seen Grand Nationals run in very difficult conditions, but a lot of them are mature, seasoned chasers that are featuring in those races. I just don't feel that does it have a real benefit in the long term. Others would disagree, and would point to previous winners who have went on and done really well. Should it be amateurs that are on board these horses? A lot of the amateurs are fantastic horsemen and women, no doubt about that, but amateurs do get quite a few races at Cheltenham to show off their skills, and I just feel that maybe if this race is to stay and remain, that they could maybe consider, one, the trip. Does it have to be over 4 miles? Could they cut it to 3.5 miles maybe? 2, because you have a novice chase, obviously the Arkle over 2 miles, then you've got the 2.5 mile novice and the 3 mile novice. Do we have to then make a big jump up to a 4 mile novice? Can it maybe be a 3.5 mile, or 3 mile and a quarter? And then should we look at professional jockeys being on board? It's up for debate, and I'm sure it will be looked at as we go forward. But what I have to say is, though, and I said this the other week on the preview vlog, I do feel at times that in horse racing we get ourselves into a position where it's like a polar opposite. You have people that staunchly defend racing no matter what happens, and they're all very much, no, this is the traditions of the sport and we have to stand by it. Then on the other side of it, you have people that are like panic mode, and we have to do something. Now Nick Russ was on Luck on Sunday, and I felt in parts he came across well, but there was other times where he was very ultra defensive. Philip Hobbs was on with him, and there was times where I felt he spoke over Philip, a man of great experience and a guy that comes across very much as a gentleman, Philip Hobbs. But I think we have to look at it, and there's two things that I think we have to be very aware of with Cheltenham. I heard the people saying, well, Nick Rush was saying it himself about that we have to be aware of what people think about animals, and we're a very animal loving country, and so on and so forth, and we have to be aware of that. And the argument was made, well, Cheltenham's very popular. You look at the crowds, they up every year for Cheltenham Festival, but that in itself makes it very important as to why we should make sure that the sport is doing what it can in terms of horse welfare and jockey welfare as well, because the more people that are interested in it, we have to keep them interested in it, because we have to make them aware that it is a sport that runs a risk for both horse and jockey, no doubt about that, but we have to be shown that there is, when you look at Cheltenham, the festival itself, not everyone that goes to those 4 days are massive racing fans. They go along for the spectacle. They maybe bet on racing in a regular period, but they possibly don't really they follow it on a daily basis, or have a real understanding of what each race represents and what the purpose of that race is. For some it's just the betting spectacle, and they look at Mullins betting on that, Mullins Walsh, I'm betting on that, Elliott's in form, I'm betting on that, that's an odds-on favourite, I'm lumping on that, and bookies love that sort of, sometimes that approach that they can, throw your money down, we'll go for it, but there are a lot of us in the sport who have a lot of care for what we were watching, and I must admit, the particular race, the Triumph Hurdle, there was a lot of people in the pub where I watched that race who had a lot of money on Sir Eric. There was singing and dancing before the race, and cries for Sir Eric. When Sir Eric broke down, there was just a massive gasp in the pub, but there was stony silence after it. It took about a minute or so for people to get to grips with it, and the large crowd that was sitting out in the sun terrace in the pub we were watching it, who had lumped on it, I would imagine, in a massive way, were very quiet. There was no sort of at the end of the race, the horse that won the Pentland Hills, it was someone in my party, Andrew, one of my friends, had backed it at 20-1, and he was chuffed, but there was still a sour sort of feeling after that, and it was very difficult. So that just showed to me that there was a lot of horse racing fans watching that race at that time and had an understanding as to what had happened and the consequences of it, and that it hits you in a way that you realise the consequences of sport. And there is some, I think what we have to sometimes do in the sport and relay, for a lot of people, they would ask the question as to, well, why does Sir Eric have to lose his life, have to be euthanized after suffering that injury? Because it's a grey area for some people, and I think we have to have an explanation more as to why that happens, what the consequences of that are. I remember one of the Champions Day meetings, or it was a big meeting at Ascot, and I can't remember for the life of me which horse was that went wrong coming into the home straight, and it was not a pleasant sight to see, of course. And John Gosden was there, and I think he went down to look to help out when the horse had came to grief. And then John Gosden came on TV after it and explained eloquently what went on and what the consequences are and why the decision was taken for the horse, for its life to be taken from. And these are the things that I think have to be explained at times to not just to people who maybe tune in just because it's Cheltenham Festival or Royal Ascot or whatever it may be, or the Grand National, but even to horse racing fans, because a lot of horse racing fans don't understand why these decisions are taken and what the consequences are. They accept that there's vets there and so on, and that these decisions aren't taken lightly, but these things have to be explained more, because if they aren't, then that's when you get the vacuum of information, where quite rightly some people say, well, if nobody's going to tell me, then it's quite easy to jump to your own conclusions. So these are maybe things that I think can be maybe spoken about more, and as I say, it was a festival that had its ups and downs, and yeah, we always say, and I think the good thing about racing is there is always a review into it, and there's always a look back, and I think everybody in racing has to accept that, and has to accept that if we want to move forward, there's at times has to be changes, not all the time, and not every change that's that's suggested should be implemented. But common sense at times has to be seen, that it's not just tradition, but also to move forward with the times, and keep the sport in a position where, as I said, it is the second most attended sport in this country after football. So yeah, as I say, a great spectacle, but lessons to be learned. Right, what I'll quickly do is I'll give you some of my tips for tomorrow. Kelso has a cracking meeting on tomorrow. They have got some really good prize money up for grabs, with it being a good Saturday card. 2 tips that I'll give for you. In the 225, I'll put up Champagne City. It ran well at Newbury last time out, I felt, and has a good chance in that one. Maybe an each way punt, but I'll be putting it on the nose. And the 335 at Kelso, a horse taking a step up and trip. It's Harry Graham's horse, I Right. It's a horse out of Yates, by Yates. So, you know, this step up and trip, I don't think will be a big hindrance to it. I think it might. I'm going and hopeful that it will, because this is its first time running over this type of trip, over just over 3 miles. That it will benefit it. And at about 8 to 1, I think it has a decent enough shout. At Newbury, they've got a decent card. 240, I'll put up Paul Nicholls, who has been having a good season, of course. He has Friend or Foe in the 240. Horse won at Taunton, been bought from France, ran really well at Taunton, and is favourite for this race, but I think it will go well again and should get another win under its belt. And then at Lingfield, the 345, they have a 5 furlong Class 2 sprint handicap there. 2 horses here. Gracious John, as you know, is a horse that I really like. Ran well last time out. Dropped £3 for that, and should reverse the form, I think, really well. It's got a better draw as well. And as I say, 5 furlongs at Lingfield, it really suits it. If you want to do a wee forecast, wee reverse forecast, I think George Bowen, who ran well at Wolverhampton, comes to Lingfield here. Sebastian Woods takes £5 off, and I think will be in there with a shout as well. So maybe George Bowen each way, Gracious John on the nose, or a reverse forecast on those 2 maybe is the trick. Right, what we have coming up over the next couple of weeks, well, next week it's back to the flat turf. It's the Doncaster's inaugural meeting of the flat turf season, of course, the Lincoln. So we'll be looking forward to that. There's also a couple of decent listed races on the card that day, so we will be looking at them. And then the following week after that, it is Grand National, the big Saturday of the year, it's without a doubt, and we'll be focusing on that from then on. And then the following week after that, it's Ayr's big chance in the spotlight with the Scottish Grand National. Wee point of note, next Monday there was due to be a flat meeting at Ayr, which was a little bit unusual because they don't usually run in the flat prior to the Scottish National meeting, but they won't be anyway, because Ayr announced this week that that meeting will not take place due to there was some drainage work done on the flat track, and I think the grass hasn't grown as well as they would have expected. So possibly a bit of false ground there. When I did first read it, I went, oh no. Ayr, as we know, has had some issues with the flat track, going back, of course, to that September a couple of years ago when the Ayr Gold Cup meeting was lost. So let's hope everything irons out. I'm sure it will be. I'm sure Graham and the team down there at Ayr will be doing all their utmost best to make sure that we're ready for racing at Ayr after the Scottish Grand National meeting on the level. But that's it from me. I hope you have a cracking weekend. We get some more winners, and we fill up those pockets for that flat turf season starting and for the Grand National. Have a good one. CopaLoadofRacing, folks.